Okay, we'll start. Thanks for coming to this talk. So we are going to talk about big money today. The context for the work I'm presenting here is that, well, first of all, it's not a professional project, it's a private project. I wanted to go a little bit into data science, and I wanted to learn Perl 6. And to do those things, I needed a motivating subject, which I found, which was this notion of transactions of real estate in Geneva. A disclaimer, so it has nothing to do with my employer, what I'm presenting here. I'm learning Perl 6 grammars, so I may say some stupid things. Please bear with me if some things I say are not correct. And these are not the final results, but still there are already some interesting results to show. The field of natural language processing is very in fashion with data science, but most of the literature is not in Perl. Most people are using Python. There is a natural language toolkit for doing all kind of analysis of natural language. Here we are going to talk about an area which is well suited to Perl grammars, because it's not just general language, it's a very topic-specific language which has some formal parts in it, and so we can parse that with a grammar. So enough for the introduction. The data we're going to talk about is a real estate transaction which is online in Geneva. Why is it online? Because it's a quite hot political topic. We have a lot of speculation in Switzerland, and the prices go higher and higher because people buy properties not for inhabiting them, but just for making money and reselling them at a higher price later on. So in 1989, the Swiss government decided they needed an urgent law to fight against speculation, and the idea was if we publish the prices, maybe that can help to make it more open. So they had this urgent law already quite a number of years ago. Then it went into the regular civil code of Switzerland in 1994, and this just doesn't say the canton must publish, it just says they can publish. So what happened after that was only 3 cantons. You know, we have 23 cantons in the whole of Switzerland. Only 3 of them did really take this opportunity to publish the data, and Geneva is one of them. So in Geneva we have this civil code application law which says it will be published on the internet, and not only the names of the owners but the price of a real estate transaction. That's the law we have now, but it took a long way to get there. So there's an interesting history of left-wing combat on that topic, because so the law was adopted in 1997 under the pressure of the left-wing parties. So they said if we want to fight against speculation, and if we want to fight against money laundering, which is another concern, that some of dirty money could go to be washed in buying property. So they passed this law in 1997. And then what happened in 2010 is there was a major revision of this law for other reasons. So it's the global civil code application law. It talks about a lot of different topics in that law. And the right wing managed to just remove that article, and it went more or less unnoticed. So the left wing didn't react, and the 1st of January of the next year, then suddenly people realized that we no longer have the data. And it was a big turmoil in Geneva, and you see that just a couple of months later, they managed to get it voted the reverse way, so it's published again. Okay, that's for the context. Now, the site is this one. This is the place where the data is published. And so you can give some criteria and get the data. They took some precautions because they didn't want somebody to download the whole database. but it's quite rudimentary. So the first thing they did was to say you cannot ask for a period of more than 60 days. So just taking, so that's how it was last year or even a couple of years, month ago. It was still like this. Of course, it's quite easy to turn around and get the whole data. Then just a few weeks ago, they added this stupid captcha here. Well, there's a computation to do and you have to give the answer. So as you can imagine, it's not that hard to well, actually I didn't do the exercise because I had the data before, but I'm sure that people here in the room, if you want to get the whole data, probably you're able to. Anyway, so if you do a search on this site, what you get as a result is something like this. So you have a big HTML page with one line for each transaction. As you can see, each transaction is just unstructured text. So what I did with that was to spider the whole thing, getting data like this. So the data is about 37,000 lines. Each line is one transaction, and on each transaction, well, it's one line of text, but you can see there is some structure. It's not very easy to detect it, but there is some structure. It says where it happened, when it happened, what was the price, description of who is selling, who is buying, and description of what property we are talking about. Okay, so I'm not the only person who was interested into that data. So there is this site, which is called, it's called registrefoncier.com. It's a very ambitious name because registrefoncier.com makes you think it's the whole world, but actually it's just Geneva data. And what they did, those people, which are anonymous by the way, I don't know who they are, they took the data and put a search engine on it, so full text indexing. So and there is no restriction on that site. There is not this 60 days restriction, so it makes it much easier if you know the name of a location or the name of a person to get information. But the search engine is quite rudimentary. It doesn't know it doesn't make a distinction between prefix and whole world. So for fun, I did a search on Perl, and I got, as you can see, I got 1,000 results. For that matter. Why? Because we have a borough in Geneva which is called Perli-Certout, and Perl is a prefix of Perli-Certout, so everything that happens there is in the results. So, well, it's something, but it's not totally usable if you are really curious about this data. Another thing this site did was something statistics of the prices per year per borough in Geneva. Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing is the so here the site, I'm sorry that we cannot propriété.tdg.ch. TDG is the Tribune de Genève, is the local newspaper in Geneva, and they did also a project of data journalism to study what kind of owners we have by age, by location, and things like that. So far, so good. But I'm interested in something which is a bit more difficult to do, which is this, the top benefits. We're talking about speculation. So who did earn a lot of money by buying and selling real estate in Geneva? And here you see some of the top transactions of the last few years. The data we have here, so we have the date, the price, and then we have the other columns which says when the seller acquired himself that property and for which price. And of course, having this data, We can compute what is the benefit and even the benefit over time. So divide the benefit by the duration of the interval. And these are, I was just amazed of the figures. I mean, some people did earn more than 1 million per month of Swiss francs. That's not bad. Thank you very much. I have another, but maybe you need. Yeah. Okay, so these are my results right now. I'm already quite happy, but there are a number of things which are not perfect there, because it's not complete, it's not totally correct, and it's not detailed enough. So now I'm going to go into a bit more technical talk to say those figures, I got them with Perl 5 regex, so I'll show that. And then I'm in the process of going into deeper data with a Perl 6 grammar. So the Perl 5 version, so here is the data again. As I already said, it looks quite flat, but there is some structure in it. So here is what a human can parse quite easily. There is a header part, which tells in which borough, at which date, for which price. Well, that's a pun. I changed the names. I do not want to leave the real names here. Okay. So we have the header. Then we have a description of who was selling. Then we have a description of who is buying, and this can be several people. And if there are several people, maybe they are not equal percentage. Some people can take 1/3, some other people can take 2/3. So this also is information that we need to parse. And finally comes the description of the property that has been sold. So for parsing this, what hints can we give to a computer? Because a human can find the information quite easily, but for automatic parsing, well, this thing here is a keyword, ancien. Sometimes the shape is a bit different. Sometimes it's written ancien propriétaire, sometimes it's plural, sometimes it's singular, but the word ancien tells me, okay, here I begin the description of the seller. And nouveau, well, is the counterpart of it, is who is the buyer. Another interesting keyword here is, it's not always present, but when it is present, it tells me when the seller acquired himself the property. And another thing here is, this is contextual information. So from the header, we know in which borough it happened. And the borough can be described either by name or by number, but once I know the number of this borough, I can detect quite easily what is the unique ID of the piece of land that was sold, because the piece of land is exactly the same number here, followed by we call it parcelle in French, I don't know how to say that in English. Okay, so these are the most important pieces of information we have in this data. And using Perl 5 regex, it's not too hard to get to this data. So my first version had just a couple of regex, not tied together. Each regex takes the whole string and it tries to find, so this one just tries to find the price somewhere in the line. This one tries to find the seller and the buyer, so it's not very pretty to look at. But we have these keywords, ancien, nouveau, and this is how we parse the whole thing. It uses quite a lot of quantifiers, which are eager quantifier or frugal quantifiers, because since we don't know precisely where a piece of information starts and where it ends, well, there is some backtracking going on. I try to grasp the string and then I give it back if somebody else wants the information. So this works. And this is the code to find the ID of the parcel. Once I have all of this information, I build an index here, an index by the ID number and the name of the person, and this is how I can establish a relationship between one previous transaction and the last transaction. So the Excel sheet that I showed you before was built using this technology. The problem with this technology, there are several of them. So it doesn't do all the edge cases. Sometimes, since the parsing is quite rudimentary, sometimes it's incorrect. So it has some mistakes in this relationship between buyer and seller that I is interested in it. And as I just heard a reaction before, the regex is not pretty to look at. One reason of that, because the regex has to do all the handling of the white spaces to know exactly at which spots we have a white space and to insert \s. So this is infrastructure code. It's not really interesting code, but it has to be there in a regex, and this is something that can be greatly improved if you use the grammar, as we will see later. And another problem here is all those things are quite fragile. So if I change any quantifier anywhere in the regex, I'm not sure I can really predict what will happen, because all this backtracking between several places in the regex, well, it's a bit fragile, as I said. So one thing I considered was to go to since I was in Perl 5, one thing I considered was to go to the module by Damien Conway, regex grammars, which, by the way, I use it in a number of other projects. I find it great. I know it's a gigantic hack, but it works. It works quite well in Perl 5, but it was better to take the opportunity to go to Perl 6. So now we are going to talk about Perl 6. What I want to get out of the Perl 6 parsing is the real detailed structure of the data. And so I started by building the model of the data we want to get at. And as you can see, it's quite complex, this data, because one transaction can, at a given date, for a given price, can have several transfers of property. One transfer can be itself several buildings or several pieces of land, and the transfer is between one ownership and a new ownership. And what I call an ownership is a collection of owners, and all of this means we have stars everywhere. So it's really a tree data structure, 1 to n, in several places, which of course is hard to parse with a regex, but a grammar is much better at that, because it can do the multiplicity of each subpart. I must say, however, that those stars are not the common case. The most common case is it's just one flat being sold by one person to maybe two persons. But if we want to deal with the general case, this is the model we have. And the problem to parse this, I think I already mentioned, is, well, it's not always exactly the same shape. We have some variance in the way the things are described. And the most difficult part was we have no clear markers, very few of them, of the markers where one given structure starts and where it ends. So how did I deal with that? I dealt with that using cascaded grammars, which means I have a first grammar which just takes the outside shape of the data to know for sure that this is the header, this is the transfer, and so on. And then I go deeper into those structure using other grammars. So I'm sure there are no side effects between backtracking, greediness, and so on from one grammar to the next. Again, I'm not claiming this is the best way to do it. Probably some specialists here may have other ideas, but that's where I am right now. So at least this is the data again, just to that you have it in mind again. And my first attempt at the grammar for that was this. To say, I want to parse a transaction. A transaction is a header and a couple of transfers. Header is just any character until I get a transfer. And a transfer is description of the seller and a description of the buyer. And how do I know I start the seller? Because I have this token, which is ancien. Okay, that was my first idea, but it didn't work. It didn't work, and it took me quite a while to understand why. Especially coming from a Perl 5 state of mind, I thought it made sense to say I want a frugal quantifier here, and if I find the word ancien, I will give back the characters. But the problem is Perl 6 is very clever in the various constructs you can put in a grammar, and if you use a token is automatically in ratchet mode, what they call ratchet mode, which means there is no backtracking. And since there is no backtracking, well, this frugal quantifier is not frugal anymore. It eats up the whole string, and it will not give back its content to the construct that comes after it. So once you have understood this, the solution is quite obvious. You can do this. So you replace the token by regex, and a regex is not in ratchet mode. A regex does the backtracking, and then it works for parsing what I wanted to do. It works, but it's probably not the most efficient way to do it, because there is backtracking. So it means the first construct will go through the whole string and then go back to give back some part of the string to the next construct. So I then went to another way to express the same thing, which was this. So here we use a look-ahead construct to say that the header here, I want to take any character as long as if it's not followed by this special keyword ancien. So here there is no backtracking. This construct, it can be a token again, it doesn't have to be a regex. It will take the first part of the string, and then the next construct can continue and so on. So I think this is much better. I would say the drawback of this is it's less clean in separation of parts of our grammar, because the first rule in the grammar has to already know what rule comes after it, and there is a kind of a redundancy in the grammar for doing it that way. But anyway, that's the best I came up with until now. Okay, so this is the main grammar for just doing the outside parsing. Then we have another grammar for just going into more details into the header. And why did I display this one? There's another thing which surprised me when coming from Perl 5 to Perl 6. I needed to interpolate within the grammar the collection of names of boroughs. We have, I think, about 25 different boroughs in Geneva, and it's a closed list. We know very exactly what are the possible names in that. So I have an array of those names somewhere, and I wanted to build an alternation so that I'm sure my token is really belongs to that list. The way I would do that in Perl 5, you take the array, you do a join, you put a pipe character in front of it, then you interpolate that into the regex, and you are done. And if you try to do the same in Perl 6, it doesn't work. And it took me quite a long time to understand why. Because interpolating a scalar in a regex in Perl 6, well, it doesn't interpret the meta characters. So even if you put a pipe somewhere in your variable, when it gets interpolated, it's not interpreted as an alternation within the regex. Okay, that's what the documentation tells you that, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. And finally, I found, not in the Perl 6 documentation, but in the synopsis, that actually Perl 6 does all the work for you. I didn't know that, but you just interpolate the array in which you have your data, and Perl 6 will automatically know that this is a collection of words, and it will create an alternation within the grammar, parsing this collection of tokens. So this was an interesting lesson. Okay, so this is what I have now as a result from my Perl 6 parsing. So it's not finished because we already had some structure. We have the price, we have the header, we have the seller and the buyer, but I still don't know the details about, for example, the fact that here I have 2 buyers and each of them has half of it. This I haven't parsed yet. The description of the property, I need to parse it much more precisely. So if YAPC had been 2 months later, it would have been nice. I could have told more details. But that's where I am right now. And I will conclude with what did I learn in that process about Perl 6? Well, first of all, I really love that language. It's a beautiful assembly of very clever things. But it's a very steep learning curve, even for somebody who knows Perl 5 pretty well, because it's so rich of construct, and there is so much implicit things going on, like the array interpolation example I showed you before. So yeah, there's a lot of material that you have to get into your heads to really master that beautiful language. I was really surprised by the error message from the compiler. I've never seen that in any language, the level of detail that you get when you get an error message. That's really amazing. And the weakness, I would say, at this point was in the documentation, because what is shipped with the Perl 6 doc, it's very nicely written for helping entry users, but sometimes you don't get all the details, and for getting to the details you have to get back to the older synopsis, exegesis, and so on to find it. So that's it. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. Yes? Not yet. No, that's another thing I need to do. I have no test at the moment. Yes? I'm not quite sure what I will do, because it's quite hot information. If I go to the level of detail that I want to hear, it would probably be of great interest to some journalists in Geneva. Well, what I had in mind was 2 things: a bit of self-promotion, because yeah, having data science on your CV and having achieved something, but I also think it could be used for Perl promotion. So if there is an article in the paper saying, okay, that guy got this data using the Perl toolkit, yeah, probably one could also make money with this information. So that's not my goal, and I have to be a bit careful about the not giving the results away and having them being sold or whatever, because I mentioned all this debate between left wing and right wing. I think there is some public interest on having data like this published. Of course, there is also private interest. Nobody who owns a piece of land doesn't necessarily want all the details to be on the in the open. So it's a bit delicate to use it cleverly, this data. Any other question? Yes? No. Yes. So if your scalar variable is a regex, it will be handled as a regex. Yeah. So I haven't. Yeah. Maybe you could take a string, compile it into a regex, and then interpolate that regex into the grammar. Probably that would be possible, I guess. Yes? Excuse me? Oh, really? They publish all the information? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's a different culture then, and more open maybe. But as I said, in Switzerland, only 3 cantons took this opportunity of publishing the data, even if the Swiss law allows it. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much.